In this episode, I'm speaking with Dave Lockie about the Web3 and its current and future adoption. Surprising to me, there are already thousands of online shops running on WooCommerce who are accepting cryptocurrencies as payment method, which is something Dave and his team are working on every day at Automattic. I have to put a disclaimer before this episode, and Dave is also telling this at the end. This is not financial advice. Be careful if you invest in Web3 projects or cryptocurrency and do your own research. In this episode, we are looking at Web3 from a long-term technology perspective and not from a short-term speculative one. So we are very optimistic. But of course, there's risk involved, and you need to be aware of that.
The Online Marketing Cabin is brought to you by Impside, Europe's biggest WordPress agency. If you run a website or online shop or are in need of a WordPress or WooCommerce plugin, Impside is your go-to agency for solutions on an enterprise scale.
Hi Dave, thank you for being in the show. How are you and what keeps you busy?
Hi Marcus, I'm very well, thank you for asking. I hope you are doing good too. What's keeping me busy at the moment is ad work, ploughing on with Web3 stuff, which I'm sure we'll come on to. And here in Portugal, where we moved last year, starting to get pretty hot. So starting to plan some nice outdoor activities and making the most of these coming summer months.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm also good. It's funny that you say that it's getting hot in Portugal because everyone I interview is not so gifted like you are living in such a nice place. And we're having a really bad weather here in Germany. It's raining. It's very cold. Summer is still waiting, but it will come, definitely. I'm really looking forward to talk with you about Web3 and everything. You are Web3 Lead at Automattic. Can you please briefly explain to our listeners what does that mean and what you're actually doing?
So I joined Automattic in April last year with that role. The high level idea is that Web3 is an important tech trend. It's emerging. Believe that there are lots of touch points for the web as it is now. So if we think about a definition for Web3 first, maybe that's useful. So if we say Web2 is, I guess it really started with the era of WordPress. So people could log in to a site and they could do user-generated content. And we started to see the birth of social networks and then smartphones and apps and all this stuff. So it's the web as it is really at the moment, dominated by tech giants, but incredibly social, incredibly online. So it's taken us a very long way from Web 1, which was sort of browse a web page from a centralized service to this sort of explosion of user-generated content. For me, Web3, and it's important to note that lots of people mean and think different things about Web3. For me, Web3 is about a new layer to the internet in terms of infrastructure, which is a cryptographic network that allows lots of things. The original use case for that was financial, so being able to make payments online, and really Bitcoin, I guess, spawned that original peer-to-peer cryptographic network that then became part of the internet. And that's evolved through other networks such as Ethereum into a slightly broader set of fundamental points of infrastructure. So with Bitcoin, you have a wallet, and anyone can send Bitcoin from one wallet to another wallet directly over this peer-to-peer network. You just run some software. So you don't have to log into PayPal. You can't go to your bank and say that you made a mistake. Everything is directly under your control, and the communication there is just the internet. So it's a protocol level financial network. Ethereum takes some of that and says, okay, but if you've got an address that you're sending to and from, that can also act as a form of identity. And we want to be able to run basic programs on this network as well. So we want to be able to deploy some code to this cryptographic network, and if something happens and the code runs, and whatever the code says gets executed. And that then gives us a whole bunch of really interesting different use cases that fall out of that. So people might have heard of DeFi, so decentralized finance. This is a way for people to interact, to access financial services without the need for a centralized third party. So if you want to exchange Bitcoin for Ethereum, you can do that using a DeFi exchange. If you want to lend or borrow money or perform a number of different financial services, you can do that, and it's all just using open code deployed in this open network, and anyone can access it. We've also seen a lot of stuff around NFTs, which are a lot of things to a lot of different people. I think an interesting way to think about them is a digital collectible that you can sort of provably own. And collectible in this context is in many ways more diverse than we think of a collectible in the real life. So people collect everything from stamps to wine to luxury cars, and famously with NFTs, it's all about pictures of monkeys or punks or whatever. But the use cases for digital collectibles are just as big, in fact, probably much bigger than traditional offline collectibles. So that was a long answer, but just to recap, so Web3 is this decentralized peer-to-peer network that acts at an internet level and lets people do things that they haven't been able to do before: make payments, control identities that allow them to undertake actions on that network. So I got sucked into the Web3 and crypto rabbit hole sort of 5 or 6 years before I joined Automattic, and I, over that time, built quite a strong conviction that there were going to be lots of intersections between Automattic's interests, the software that we run, the services that we provide, our customers' needs, and what Web3 was doing. So that could be, on one hand, as simple as, I'm a merchant on WooCommerce, I'd like to be able to accept payment in Bitcoin. On the other hand, it could be something like, I'm a photographer and I'd like to sell NFTs as a way of monetizing my art, and I'd like to use WooCommerce for that. So at a high level, my role is about trying to land those touch points and disruptions in as elegant, profitable, responsible way as possible, both for Automattic and, of course, our broader WordPress ecosystem in which we reside.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that very extensive answer. I think
It's a bit of a long one.
Yeah, it was a long one, but I think that's pretty, it was a pretty cool answer that has a lot of value in. And I think if you ask someone who's really into that rabbit hole of Web3 and you ask like, what's Web3? You get this long answer. If you ask someone on the street who's not into it, it's like, is that Bitcoin? But what I got from it was it's way more than the use case which we are currently seeing, like, okay, accepting crypto payments in your online shop, in your WooCommerce store, for example. It is also NFTs and maybe finding ways to sell photography or to put your creative work out with a licensing structure in NFTs, and a lot of use cases that we probably are not even seeing yet and will emerge in the next years or so. And your role is to observe all those kind of things and find integrations into WooCommerce, but not only that, also the WordPress ecosystem itself, right?
Yeah, I mean, we have specific roles within that ecosystem, and the ecosystem will go and do what it wants with Web3, with or without us, but we want to have the best possible posture in that regard. And because so many WordPress and WooCommerce customers are also users are also automatic customers. There's a pretty big overlap there, but I do want to be clear that this is Automattic is a company. I don't work in the open source division, for example. So because I've given you like a really long-winded, quite technical answer, I also want to give you an answer about Web3 from a slightly different perspective, if that's okay, and it'll be a lot shorter, because I think if you can't answer something simply, then it's not a clear idea. So looking at it from a more human perspective, I talked with Web2 about how it took us from the internet being like a research or reading tool through to this incredibly rich social network, to the point where we now worry that Twitter is undermining elections and changing the face of politics. So Web2 saw humanity or human civilizations and societies integrate digitally in new and profound ways. And I think Web3 takes that the next step beyond. A lot of us already rely on the internet for our livelihoods. A lot of our critical data is there, the data about us, about our families, about our likes, etc. And Web3 just recognizes that and starts to build some of the infrastructure to let us do that in new and powerful ways. And I think much like when Web2 started, we couldn't possibly have foreseen what would come out of that. The same is true with Web3. So we're seeing these individual use cases like DeFi or NFTs or crypto payments, but I think the end of the Web3 journey takes us to an entirely different experience of the internet, because it's not coming along on its own, much like social networks intersected with mobile phones, smartphones, and the internet exploded. Web3 is coming down the road with artificial intelligence, which is obviously like everywhere at the moment. Also, probably augmented reality and mixed reality over the next 5 years or so. And so whenever I'm trying to think about the intersection of WordPress and Web3, I'm also trying to think about that intersection in the context of these other tech trends which are coming down the line. But yeah, Web3 is basically, as we all use the internet even more and it becomes even more critical to us individually and as a society, what would be some good things to have that are part of the internet itself rather than part of a particular company's service offering on top of the internet?
Right, the decentralization part and getting back control actually on how you use services on the web, or how your everything we do is handled. Like at the moment, or in Web 2, we saw a big trend into monolithic systems. Like every social media network is owned by a company and has like an interest in it. And I think from my naive standpoint, where I'm not so much into the topic as you, is Web3 is the big hope of we're having a more decentralized structure of also financial transactions I can make without a bank. Like that's the use case of crypto payments. Like I can do it without a middleman. I'm in full control. I'm my own bank. And with Web3, my hope at least is that more services are created in the web, which I can use and be in control of what happens when I use the service.
Yeah, and I think that's part of, that's definitely part of the appeal or part of the promise of Web3 for a lot of people. I also think it just builds upon some of WordPress's core mission and core values. So WordPress is open source. It comes with freedoms, the freedom to create, to share, and open source has been really critical to how much benefit we as people derive from the internet. A lot of the internet runs on open source software, and the internet is a better place for it. Because these cryptographic networks are, by and large, some exceptions, comprised of open networks. It's like taking open source software because you can see the code that's running, but you can also see the state. And the way you could think about this is currently we can all visit a recipe page for a cake. We can take the recipe and we can follow the steps and we all end up with slightly different cakes. The analogy, like a more immediate analogy, might be WordPress. So we can all download WordPress and we can all install it and run it on our computers, but maybe you're running Nginx and I'm running Apache, or maybe I'm running an older version of PHP than you, or something like this. And so the end result is that the cake, the software application, is not exactly the same in every case. And often we have no way of knowing externally exactly what the end result of that process is. Because cryptographic networks rely on this open data, not only can we see all the ingredients, we can see the finished cake. It's there. We can see the application running. We know exactly what lines of code running and what they're doing at any given point. And so this creates really profound opportunities for collaboration. So for example, at the moment, if a social network gets taken over and whoever's managing it wants to do something different with it, then users are still very much trapped. You can't export your social graph and you're stuck because unless you encourage everyone to move, then you won't recreate the experience which was so attractive in the first place. So a Web3 take on a social network is that actually the social graph is owned directly is accessed directly by the people that are using it. So if I follow you, that's represented by an NFT, which is tied to my wallet directly. And so the protocol, the data sits out there. It's governed by the protocol itself. And if we collectively decide that we don't like this client or we don't like that protocol, all the data is open and we can go and do something else. And so I think we'll start to see that composability being more and more important as people learn how to leverage that power. Sorry, that was a little in depth, but I hope that was
yeah, you're diving really into the rabbit hole, and it's super interesting. I don't want to interrupt you.
Drag me back out. Where do we want to go?
Yeah, we're going in a minute into the direction of what you are currently doing at Automattic or WooCommerce to integrate Web3 services that are currently available in the market, and how, for example, merchants can integrate crypto payments already right now into their online shops, and why that is a good thing, why how that all works and what you're doing there. So away from the very valuable vision of Web3 in general you have shared with us to something operational. But before we do that, I would like to play a little game with you. It's called Two Truths, One Lie, where you can shamelessly lie into my face and the ears of our listeners. And by the end of the episode, we will try to guess what was the lie.
Okay, so my two truths and a lie, in no particular order, of course, are: one, that I'm a published scientific author; two, that I can speak fluent Indonesian; and three, that I emigrated to Portugal with my family last summer. So you've got a 50-50 chance now because we've already talked about it. That's a favor to you.
Yeah, I think that's the charm of this game and the podcast, because you can leave hints somewhere, and it's like a little reading or listening test if we can solve the riddle. For me, it's already a 50-50. I have some tendencies, but we will check by the end of the episode if I can guess it. Maybe you will leave a hint here and there too. So making Web3 for merchants very operational, because you have some really cool stuff to share what you did with WooCommerce. It is already possible right now to choose selected Web3 integrations for a WooCommerce shop, right? Please tell us a bit what you did with that initiative, when you started, and where you stand today.
Sure, thank you. So the original use case, I guess, as we touched on earlier, for Web3 or crypto is Bitcoin. It's peer-to-peer internet native payments. And certainly that was the demand that we were seeing most from merchants is I want to be able to accept crypto on my WooCommerce store. So my home team within Automattic is in the payment partnerships team within WooCommerce. And there's good reason for that, because that was where we wanted to start off. Let's look at that original, very proven use case and see what solutions are out there, see what the requirements are in terms of what merchants want, because there's actually quite a broad set of requirements. Sounds quite simple. I just want to accept cryptocurrency, but when you dive into the details, there's a lot to unpack. So we went out and identified 4 partners that we thought would make a good initial launch set. And in Q4, we launched those partners onto the WooCommerce marketplace. So if you go to the marketplace under payments, you'll find a section called crypto. And there you'll find our 4 launch partners, who are Coinbase Commerce, OpenNode, DPay, and HavenPay. They all bring something slightly different to the table, but there's also some good overlap. So yeah, if you're a merchant, you can go and choose one of those extensions and start accepting crypto, well, today, or however long it takes for you to open an account and get up and running.
You know, we are running some online shops in our agency by ourselves, and in the last hype cycle of crypto, I got emails every day like, do you want to accept crypto payments in your shop? You should be. Everyone's hyped about crypto. And as a shop owner, I always was like, that sounds super complicated. And I really don't know why I should trust that random crypto guy who's writing me a cold email about his application he has built. What would you say to merchants that now maybe think like, well, sounds complicated. Why should I trust this new technology? Maybe.
Yeah, well, okay, so there's a few things in there. The first is like, it's good to be skeptical in this day and age, for sure. There are lots of scams and disinformation. That's definitely not limited to cryptocurrency, but sadly, there is a bunch of that in this space. As you might imagine, whenever you cross money and the internet, then people are going to see that as a way to make a fast buck in whatever way they can. You say it's quite a new technology. Bitcoin was actually released, I think, only like 5 years after WordPress. So it's not all that new. It feels new to a lot of people because it was kind of niche for a long time. But it's getting pretty mature now. The crypto market cap is over $1 trillion at the moment. That's a lot of money that people trust to these networks, to these tools. In terms of accessibility to merchants, so if you are running a coffee shop and you want to accept crypto, and we'll talk about some of the reasons why you might want to do that, then you've really got a sliding scale of, I'm interested and I want to have all the levers and knobs and buttons and I want to be able to play with them, right through to just let me take a payment. So on this kind of the easy end of the slider, I kind of call that crypto light, because actually as a merchant, all you end up with is your preferred currency in your bank account, and you don't need to worry about crypto other than understanding what your customer's experience is going to be. Like, how do they actually check out? Is there anything you need to do to your website, to your store, to improve that experience? So that's really all you're concerned in terms of having to choose which coins to take payment from? Do you need to exchange them? How do you store them? You don't need to worry about any of that. Multiple partners on the Woo marketplace will simply let you enable the extension. They will let your shoppers pay with either one or a choice of a number of different cryptocurrencies. But if you've configured it in your payment processor merchant settings, that money will get instantly converted and just sent into your bank account. And often that payout time is significantly faster than it would be through a traditional payment method. So yes, you can either go crypto light. I don't care about crypto. I just want to access new markets, or I want to pay low transaction fees, or I want my cash sooner, whatever it is, or I want to give my shoppers more choice. Or you can go right through to the more complicated end of, I want to run a non-custodial wallet and I want to configure which chains and tokens I want to support and all the rest of it. So yeah, if you really don't care, you just want to grow your e-commerce revenue, then the crypto light option might be for you. If you want to get a little bit more involved and learn, then move that slider along towards the difficulty end.
I think that's super important to understand, and is for a shop owner, like, it's not more complicated than implementing another plugin for another payment solution for a credit card or bank transfer or PayPal or whatever. It's just another payment solution you offer in your shop, and it's not more complicated as that if you don't want to make it complicated. And it's the same question as, why should I only accept Visa and not MasterCard? That's like, why should I not accept Visa, MasterCard, PayPal, bank transfer, and crypto? Like, it's just another form of payment, which gets more and more adapted. I was pretty surprised by the number of merchants that already choose crypto payments or implement crypto payments in their WooCommerce shops, right? You have more than 10,000 active users right now on your
according to the WordPress.org stats, north of 10,000. And that's just from the marketplace partners alone. We know that there's a lot more out there. I'd also like to just add on to that the partners that you'll find on the WooCommerce marketplace, and this isn't true of all the extensions in the WordPress.org marketplace, you need to be careful about that distinction, but the partners on WooCommerce.com, these are all companies, they're corporations. You have a contract with them. They are bound by laws and regulation, just like any other financial provider. Perhaps there's like different regulation that governs a payment processor compared to a bank, for example. But this is not the Wild West. These are often US, if not European-based companies that you have a contractual relationship with. So that made it easy for us to partner with them. It's kind of difficult to sign a contract with a decentralized protocol, after all. But it also should give financial and legal stakeholders within merchants, merchant organizations, a little bit of peace of mind, because you can read the contract, you can see exactly what you're getting and not getting, and you're logging into a website that has a merchant control panel, much like Stripe or PayPal would. So it's a very familiar experience. There's just a little bit of new terminology to understand if you want to go and configure. But I think the crypto companies in general, and our partners in particular, have come a long way in terms of making a new language accessible, and really trying to educate merchants as to what this all means and what the implications of their choices are. So I would say don't be scared. It can be really very simple.
Yeah, I think that's a super valuable service you and your team is providing for WooCommerce, in giving a little bit more trust into selected partners. I mean, by the end, they are independently working companies, but they are officially in the WooCommerce extension store, and like every other plugin or theme or solution that is listed in there, we have also some solutions listed in there. Those things are having kind of a due diligence done.
Yeah, we have
Um,
pretty strict marketplace guidelines. They're there for both the protection and enhanced experience of our shoppers. And as as a third-party developer with products on the marketplace, Inside knows very well the number of hoops that you have to jump through. It's not trivial.
Yeah.
You can't just write any old plugin and stick it up there. There are responsibilities around support, around user experience, and frankly, even just the documentation and making sure that you've got great onboarding, great product description page. None of that stuff is quick or easy to do. So our partners are committed to the WooCommerce space, and yeah, we're proud of them.
Awesome. Personally, I have never seen an online shop, but it's my personal shopping preference, maybe, which has accepted crypto payments. Do you see some markets that are maybe adapting earlier, or some verticals of online shops that are more into crypto payments right now?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the sectors that tend to be gaming, which doesn't have much overlap with WordPress or WooCommerce. There's a little bit, but not too much. So kind of within games, or gaming, in fact. So online gambling, there's pretty high adoption there. I'd say there's luxury. So any luxury goods, whether that's cars or fashion. There's travel, particularly high-end international travel, including things like private jet charters, etc., where the ticket price can be pretty high. And then one which I think is sort of the biggest overlap outside of luxury for WooCommerce, which is digital products and services. So you could be selling training, you could be selling hosting or VPNs, or any one of a number of different purely digital products and services. That's where we see crypto adoption working particularly well. And there are some good reasons for that. So one of the benefits of accepting crypto as a merchant is that you can take payment from anyone in the world at any time. So they don't have to use PayPal or have a credit card. If they have Bitcoin or Ethereum or USDC in their crypto wallet, they can check out with you and they can make payment. And as our world becomes increasingly globally connected through the internet, it just makes a lot of sense that people are going to want payment methods that work instantly and internationally. And that's something that we kind of take for granted within economies like the US and the EU. But the world is a big place, and often there are expensive fees for sending money, converting money. It can take a long time, etc. So that benefit of being able to take payment from anyone, anywhere, using this sort of, I guess, like internet standard currencies, works particularly well when you don't have to then like ship and worry about taxes and duties and customs and imports. So whenever the transaction has to involve real world stuff, it adds friction to it. If you're buying and selling using purely digital media, then the friction drops away and it makes a lot more sense. With travel, that tends to be less of an issue, because often like the person is doing the traveling, using the jet or going to the hotel. You're not shipping the hotel. And similarly with luxury items, the shipping and the tax and the customs and all that kind of stuff can be less of an overhead, because you're typically not selling fast moving consumer goods, and it's about bulk and making minimal margin and having lots of returns. It's like fewer high value items. We have better relationships with customers, and you can see that reflected in the way that crypto adoption is happening across different merchants. So I would say merchants who are operating internationally and staying purely within the digital realm.
Awesome. So I think there's not much room left for why an e-commerce shop should not accept crypto payments now or in the near future. For everyone who's interested in, I think it makes sense to go to the WooCommerce extension store and just browse through the solutions you offer, and just have a look on what's out there and what fits your requirements the most and what you feel the most comfortable with using, and then trying to implement it. Beside that, very
There's
precise.
and there's also some good resources on there. If you go to woocommerce.com/cryptocurrency, we've tried to cover, everything from the basics through how to choose a payment partner and what that end experience can look like for your shoppers as well. So hopefully we can get you up and running pretty quickly, as well as giving you access to the actual solutions.
Awesome. Beside that, what motivates you to dive more into Web3, and is there any particular project or trend you're observing at the moment? You talked about that very interesting use case of social media and tokenization of the information we are all sharing as users in that platforms.
Yeah, I think the core realization, or like the core thing which all of the rest of my conviction is built around, really, is that internet money just makes sense. Like the internet is disrupting everything about humanity, whether it's AI, whether it's social networks, whatever it is. The internet's just coming and like breaking apart all these institutions that we've built up so carefully over so much time. And money is just another institution. It's a very primal and very interesting institution. This isn't a purely, I'm not coming at this from a like get rich scheme meaning of money. Money is as old as language. Like the oldest evidence we have for language are records of trades made between people. So money, trade, all of the different aspects of money are very core to what it means to be human. And I find that what's happening in this space is incredibly multifaceted as well. You can look at it from like the sort of actual money perspectives, or you can look at it in terms of how people are together. Like, how do we communicate? How do we collaborate? What does it mean to be an individual within this new sort of, almost this new species, right? Like the internet connects us like a hive of bees. Like an individual ant or an individual bee is a very different animal from a hive of bees or a nest of ants. So in some ways we're becoming this sort of superorganism. But what does it mean for our privacy? What does it mean for individual rights when we rely so much on the internet, particularly for our livelihoods, for the very real world issue of putting food on our family's table? It makes me nervous that we are so dependent on corporations for that. Whether we trust them, whether they're good or bad, it just doesn't seem healthy not to have other options. So I'm just fascinated at how people are reimagining everything from what it means to create and sell and make a living, through to how we can organize and collaborate and bring about the change that we want to see in the world, whatever that is. And that could be anything from sustainability and conservation through to fandom and support of particular creators, or it could just be I want to sell something which PayPal's terms of service doesn't let me sell, and I want to do that internationally, and like this is therefore like a need for me. I have no other option, but it's bringing about some really fascinating creativity. So yeah, those are the sorts of things that keep me going personally. From kind of putting my work hat on perspective, I think continuing to participate through learning in the cryptocurrency payment space, it's always evolving, and we're watching what's happening with interest. I talked a little bit about NFTs before. I think if you're looking for almost a perfect digital product, then NFTs are the closest thing that we have to that so far. It's something that people can own. It can generate ongoing royalties for you as a creator. It can be used in different ways to build communities or gate access, as well as just being fun or valuable or both. So I'm really interested to keep learning about what's happening in that NFT space and see if there are opportunities for Woo merchants to join that very rich digital economy. I mean, it's a multi-billion-dollar market already in 2023, and I'd love to see more Woo merchants figuring out how to leverage that. I mean, we're just starting to see these long promised projects from some of the bigger brands starting to the rubber hitting the road. We saw Polygon doing this amazing job with their digital collectibles last year. We've seen Meme Land by 9gag doing really well. We've started to see Nike rolling out their Swoosh Web3 network and actually starting to, I got my first poster the other day. It's actually finally starting to happen. Starbucks's loyalty program is now live. So just keeping up with everything that's happening is like a really big job. And it's fascinating. Like, I definitely encourage you to go and check out Nike Swoosh and see the way that they're talking about the project. It's about co-creation, and as much as anything, it's about trying to align interests and incentives for everyone that is interacting with the brand. So, you have creators, you have financial stakeholders, you have fans, and you have customers. Crypto lets you be like in more of those sets simultaneously. You can co-create because we've got this open collaborative community. You can get financial upside, not like being a shareholder in Nike. I don't think that's on the table, but I could see them giving rewards to people who've co-created a great new shoe design, for example. You might be a Nike fan and want to keep up to date with everything that's happening, so you're part of the community. And of course, if you see a particular pair of sneakers that you love, then you're more likely to buy them. And so collapsing those stakeholders from sort of disaligned incentives into a more harmonious economy, I think, is just a really interesting way of looking at, how people can work together to further their mission, further their cause. And that's something that I'd love to see happen in the WordPress space a lot more as well. We often think about different stakeholders in WordPress as having competing or conflicting interests. I guess I hope that these technologies can, over time, help harmonize and align those incentives so that we can continue to contribute, continue to use, continue to make money from WordPress and its ecosystem, and to do so in ever richer and more collaborative ways.
Wow, I'm speechless a bit on the broad vision you have on the topic. Definitely super interesting and insightful, even if it sounds a bit generic, what I have now to answer to your very, very long elaboration on
Sorry, I
current
hope you're
Web3
speechless rather than half asleep.
No, not half asleep. Honestly, yeah, it's incredible. I have to check out the Nike Swoosh community they have built there. What are you exactly doing there? So I saw that you told us you can design shoes there, and then
not yet. Not yet. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of I'm going to read a couple of bits because I think they're kind of interesting. Maybe they help tell the story better than I can. So Swoosh Dot Swoosh is a new community experience designed to give you the opportunity to co-create the future of Nike. Corporations so far, like, they generally have quite rigid borders, and we saw with Web2 some really interesting stuff around like crowdsourcing and collaborations. Like the internet has started to erode that sort of, we all work in the same building, and if you're not in a building, you're not in a company. So we've already seen organizations start to flex and be a little bit more fluid with that. I'll always remember this great example. Somebody gave a lecture about how a company that owned gold mining rights put out a crowdsourced competition for people to help them find where the gold is. And actually the people that won it was like a graphic design agency. They just had like a unique way of identifying where the most likely gold deposits were, and they won the competition. So we've seen nice examples of that. So I think this is about Nike trying to reimagine what a company looks like in an internet era. So they're talking about creating, collecting, trading, and flexing. So I talked earlier about how Web3 is not just arriving on its own into Web2 and intersecting, it's also arriving with AI and AR and other technologies. And so what I'm trying to imagine is that people in 5 years are going to be living in a heads-up computing environment. So at the moment, we kind of live in augmented reality already. We have noise-cancelling headphones, or we're streaming a podcast, or talking to a device, or whatever it is. And that's cool, but I think it'll only really truly sink home to people that we've changed the way that we interact with the web when it becomes part of our vision as well. So like a visual overlay, like Apple glasses, or the Oculus headset as it evolves. And so when people start to experience this blended reality, this is the actual room around me, but this is overlaid. So you might think of it like you are wearing your glasses, and the Amazon app now is, if you're browsing for like a new pair of swimming shorts or whatever, then there's a mirror on the wall, like a virtual mirror on the wall, and you can try the shorts on in real time, and you can turn around and see what they look like. Or if you're buying a device, the device becomes it's like in midair, and you can manipulate it and see, does that come apart, would that fit here, etc. And I think just intuitively we know how rich that future is going to be, partly through movies like Ready Player One, partly because we're used to playing computer games, and you kind of like, once you're in that environment, then it just it makes a lot more sense. So if we zoom forward to that sort of future, then we can imagine that pure digital products, as I say, like NFTs are the closest thing we have to at the moment, become more important, because as you're walking down a road with your friends, whether that's a real road or a virtual road, like what you see is that digital product, whether it's overlaid onto reality or it's the part of a purely digital avatar. That's how people will express themselves, will do this flex thing. So that social aspect, I think, is really interesting, and that, like the co-creating aspect too. I don't know if you've used like Midjourney. I think that's been fascinating to watch. So Midjourney is this AI image generator that's really taken off, and they run the whole experience through Discord. So it's not just that you are writing a prompt and getting an image back. You're doing that in the context of lots of other, like anyone can see the prompt that you're writing. Anyone can upscale one or ask for a variation, or like copy and paste your prompt and do something different. So we're seeing this incredible open collaboration. And we can imagine that we might do that with products as well. Like if we can get Midjourney to design this insane, like people spend a lot of time designing these AI shoes on Midjourney. You can imagine that a convergence there is that the Nike community are using a tool like Midjourney to co-create this incredibly like innovative shoe design, and they win the competition. Nike puts them into production both physically and digitally. The community gets first access to them. The co-creators get like a percentage of rights, or they get kudos or whatever else it is. Like it's that sort of community participation with perhaps, and I think probably, some form of like financial upside, as everyone realizes like we all need to make a living online, that I think will be really powerful. They talk about unlocking special access, so rewarding fandom, rewarding commitment and loyalty to the brand, and building with our community. So again, it's about saying you as part of .swoosh are part of the broader Nike family. And this isn't like you've seen an advert and you quite like Nike shoes. It's that you are a known participant, that you have this multilateral relationship with the Nike brand and the .swoosh community. It's like adding an onion ring to existing corporations. So it's easy, and I'm guilty of talking about the technology and like this highly theoretical stuff about like portability of social networks and social graphs and all of that stuff. But people want to express themselves creatively. They want to make a living online. They want to spend time and build relationships. These are very core human characteristics. These are the things that everyone needs. It's part of what it is to be human. And so I always try to bring Web3 back to that stuff, even if I'm like going off on tangents. It's all about like how do we build better experiences for people, and that's what we always focus on in WooCommerce at Automattic. Is this the right experience? Is this the right decision for our stakeholders, for our merchants, for their shoppers, for the open source community?
What a fantastic final statement for this episode, Dave. I think this was a fantastic deep dive into Web3, actually, a way deeper dive that I would have expected, even though we had a previous call where we outlined the episode and I already knew, okay, this guy is really into that and knows what he's talking about. I think from a person that has some experience or knowledge about it, but is not really following it such committed like you are, Web3 or crypto is always like either Bitcoin or crypto payments. And you have explained and showed us a lot of visionary paths where it can go into the future, and which are also maybe more concrete than most of us who don't have that deep insight are thinking, like the Nike swoosh you've explained, or the other projects you have mentioned. All that is actually currently already happening, and or the mid-journey collaboration that is possible and all that stuff. It's the people on the internet are already using it, and I think it all makes sense, and there will so many applications and use cases coming that also will make it into the broader public space, where not only internet people are using stuff only on the internet. It will come into the real world application, and I'm very thankful that you joined us today and showed us where you are thinking about, or what you're thinking about those visionary aspects, but also that you're working at Automattic on real world application and bringing real world application of Web3 into WooCommerce every day. Thank you for being on the show and sharing that with us. We still have that little game open.
I didn't even drop any hints. I did have a couple in mind, but we didn't get there, and I went off on tangent. So you're back to a 50-50 throw the dice, I'm afraid, Marcus.
Yeah. Could you recap your two truths and one lie?
I mean, one of the truths is I moved to Portugal with my family last summer. Like, we've covered that.
Yeah.
So the remaining truth and lie in no particular order are: I'm a published scientific author, and I can speak fluent Indonesian.
Okay. Given given the big brain talk you had here in this episode, I definitely give you that you're a published scientific author. I cannot deny that I would maybe see some connections here and there. I think, yes, that's true. I think you can speak Indonesian because you also talked a lot about of traveling and using payments across borders, and I think you have seen some problems with maybe cross-border payments or accessing your funds in various countries and not being able to pay where you are or something like that. So I think you can speak a little bit Indonesian and maybe have lived as digital nomad somewhere, but not fluently.
You're on the money in terms of the answer. And the two are related in that I spent a bunch of time in Indonesia. So before I worked in tech, I was a zoologist, and that was both where I did the research that ended up in scientific papers, and learnt a bit of Indonesian, but it's definitely not fluent.
Yeah,
sadly.
Can you tell the topic or name of your published study or article?
Something like habitat choice diversity in stream dwelling frogs in Southeast Sulawesi, something like that. But there's a few related. I spent eight months out there chasing snakes and frogs and lizards around the jungle.
Really?
And so contributed to, I didn't lead on any of the papers, but I'm a co-author on a few of them. We were led by this incredible, crazy scientific, Australian scientific genius. And so it was a lot of fun.
A lot of fun and a really adventurous and crazy story. We might dive deeper in another episode where we are more going into jungle adventures instead of Web3 adventures.
Over a beer at a WordCamp somewhere.
Yeah, sure. Dave, it was a real pleasure to have you here. If anyone is interested in contact you, on which social media, or how can they reach out to you if they want to have more knowledge of you in Web3 and stuff?
Well, excuse me, my voice is going now. You can find me at Dividovy, so that's DIVYDOVY, on most social networks. Or my work email is dave.lockie, which is LOCKIE at automattic.com. Dave.lockie at automattic.com. Very happy to hear from crypto lovers, haters, the skeptics, the curious. I do want to just, if I may, leave one final word of advice and caution, which is to learn and to bear in mind at all times your security. I mean, I think cybersecurity, personal or professional, is paramount for most, for pretty much everyone now. That is particularly true when you are playing with cryptocurrency or Web3. There is nobody that you can phone up and ask for a refund. It can be all on you. So by all means, have a play, but please do some careful research and understand what you're getting into first. And after that, go and have some fun. There's some pretty crazy stuff out there, and it's super interesting.
Very important disclaimer, yes. We have been, as from the professional side of things, integrations of Web3 and payment stuff and everything, of course, super optimistic because the ecosystem is growing and we see adaptation, and that is great. But there's the whole wild, wild west out there, which we did not cover because it's not in the professional, it's not really touching the professional work or integrations we are discussing here. But yeah, in general, a disclaimer, very important. And I will put something similar on the pre-roll of this episode.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's just to acknowledge, there's risk out there, and also not to get put off by that. Like there's lots of bad behavior, like there is in any kind of emergent space. There's plenty of weird, dangerous, scary parts of the internet, quite without cryptocurrency. So yeah. just wanted to leave with that little sobering note at the end of what might have otherwise come across as sort of one-sided view of things.
Yeah, very important. Thank you very much, Dave. It was a real pleasure to have you.
Thanks, Marcus.
The Online Marketing Cabin is brought to you by Impside, Europe's biggest WordPress agency. If you run a website or online shop or are in need of a WordPress or WooCommerce plugin, Impside is your go-to agency for solutions on an enterprise scale.